Hello, everyone. Good evening. So it's always great to have the chance to have the last word. And if you've ever been in an argument with anyone, that's like the last word. Well, today, Lexi and Sidebar have given me the chance to try to bring you the last word. And what I hope to share with you today is some guidance on how to think about taking risks. If we need to do something with the feedback, let me know. How to think about taking risks, handling setbacks, and growing your career despite those setbacks. And so without further ado, let's jump in and talk just a little bit, most of you, many of the people here are product managers, about the reality of risks. And how I think about risks is really simple. Most of you will agree that we live in a fast-moving, fast-changing marketplace, and that was before AI. Now, if you wait until you have 100% certainty on your investment, on your career choice, on your product choice, whatever it is, if you wait for that, the problem is you have competitors that are going to bet on their gut or on partial information and take a shot. Now, some of those competitors are going to make mistakes and run off the rails, and you won't ever have to worry about them. They'll drive off a cliff. But some of them won't. And if you're still busy contemplating because you're afraid of failure, afraid of the downsides, they will get there first. And so to succeed in today's market, you have to take risks. But the problem is, if you take enough risks, eventually you will suffer a setback, failure. And so one way to think about that is, let's say you're really good, you're a great gambler, you're right 9 times out of 10. It still means you're going to get egg on your face 1 time out of 10. So the question is, can we get systematically good at wiping that egg and coming out better? And maybe I'm the right person to tell you about this. When I was a young man, my father said, you know, Ethan, you can fall into an outhouse and come out with a new suit on. So I'm going to try and share a little bit of that with you and how I did that through some bad situations and was able to recover. Because my belief is, it isn't failure you should avoid. Instead, you should learn how to recover well. So let me take you into Ethan's personal Wayback Machine. Stories are the most memorable thing. And I was once taught that if you want to gather an audience, no matter how distracted they are, you simply say, let me tell you a story. Well, let me tell you a story about when I joined Amazon in 2005. And at that time, Amazon was a big, but not huge company. It was 15,000 people, not 1.5 million. So my job was to take Amazon into the digital media space. So at that time, Amazon made all of its money selling books, DVDs, CDs. But Jeff Bezos had foresight and said, you know, the world is changing. It's not going to work that way anymore. And he started 3 projects to sell ebooks, which became Kindle, to sell music, digital music, which eventually became Amazon Music and Prime Music, and to sell TV and movies online, which I launched as Amazon Unbox and became Prime Video. Unbox was the idea, terrible name. Jeff has later called it the worst product name in Amazon history. And I was there when he chose it, but I think he's blacked that all out. But the idea was, of course, it's media without a box. But at this time, in 2005 into 2006, when we built this, there was no Kindle. AWS, if you Google it, you'll find it launched its first service really in the spring of 2006. EC2 came out about the time I'm talking about, but it was not a thing and not making any money. So, Jeff pulled this all aside. My product was the first of the 3 that was going to come to market. And he pulled me aside and he said, you know, you're going to be our first entry into this new digital world. It's really important that the product just work. You've got to make a good impression for us. No pressure. Now, I joined the company as a senior manager. It's a smaller company. I come in as a senior manager. I start with a team of 6. As we approach launch, my team has grown 50%. I have a team of 9. And we built the product. In 2006, again, way back machine, only 30% of US households had broadband. So streaming, like all of us do today, was not possible to reach most customers. So we built a download-based product. If you remember this thing, it was called Windows Media Player. And we were using Windows Media Player and downloading. So you bought your movie, you waited a few hours, then you could watch it. Imagine that today. But that was revolutionary compared to buying a DVD and waiting 2 or 3 days for Prime. So we built this product, but it's a PC-based product. And for those who built PC products, you know there's a million configurations of hardware and software. And you need to run a big beta to shake out all the bugs. But remember, it's a secret project and we want to surprise the market. So over my objection, it is decided no beta test, we're going to test internally, just like we do with our website, which is a completely different environment, you can roll back, just like our website, and we're going to roll it out as a surprise to the market. Okay, well, you own the company and I don't. So, a few days before our launch, it's time for the Amazon All Hands. And Jeff wants us to demo the product to the Amazon All Hands. So now you have to imagine me, a younger me with brown hair, standing on a stage like this, except a couple changes. First, 1,000 of my new peers at Amazon, filling a much larger audience. Second, Jeff Bezos, my SVP, and my VP sitting in the front row. And third, a 40-foot high movie screen behind me that's been used for all the things in the All Hands, the financial results, the updates, all of that. So that morning, we downloaded a movie, we downloaded Office Space, the famous red stapler scene, if you know it, and we queued it up and hit pause. And we sat in the audience while they did all the financial results and so on. And then we came up on stage. I had a business partner who was a Hollywood guy, and he was going to speak first. So he decided he was going to warm up the audience. He's deeply enmeshed in Hollywood, and to an audience of book editors and SCEs, he starts telling movie-based jokes about red carpet films, and they fall flat as a brick. And he panics, and he says, and here's Ethan to tell you more, and hands me the mic. So I'm already set up for success. But I step forward, tell the audience a little bit about the product, and say, now I'm going to show you, and I hit play. And the audience roars. Huge laughter. Now it's a funny scene, but something's not right. So the movie screen's behind me, and you can see me. And there's film of this event. You can see me turn around and go like this. Because Office Space is playing all right, upside down, 40 feet high. And I have no idea why this would be. It turns out Microsoft had a bug. All of you know about the idea of prioritizing bugs. They knew that if you pause something for a couple hours, sometimes it would play back upside down. But why would you care? Like, nobody pauses anything for 2 hours. If they do, they'll restart it. But I turn back. I'm alone in the spotlight. And there's Jeff. You get to play Jeff today, sir. Congratulations, you're very welcome. There's Jeff and all of my management, plus 1,000 of my new peers, looking right at me. The question is, the failures happen, what do you do now? So I had to react on instinct, but I hope to give you some tips that you can take away and be prepared if this ever happens to you. So, first thing I did, I looked out the audience and said, told the story I told you. I said, before we got here, Jeff emphasized that this product just has to work. Obviously, it's not working. I'm going to go fix that. And then I left the stage. Now, why was this a sufficient answer? Well, first, I took ownership. I stepped up and said, I'm going to do this. Second, I expressed a clear plan of action. I'm going to go fix this. And third, I didn't try to hide from the fact that it was broken. I didn't try to dissemble or cover for it. Because how do you cover for 40-foot upside down moving? So, you may be interested to know, well, what happened? What happened after I did this? Well, there's two parts to that story, and it wouldn't be complete to skip past lunch. And at that time, Jeff Bezos had a tradition, which is after every all hands, he took all the presenters to lunch. So here's me in the AI-generated image, which actually, you know, since my trademark blue shirt, I think he did a great job. But Jeff, the meeting ends, and I know where the venue is, and I start walking down the street to lunch, and Jeff apparently has taken a car there, because I get there, I'm directed to a private dining room, and there's Jeff sitting alone at a big table, and I'm the first one to walk in. Now again, empathize with me, I'm new at the company. I'm a senior manager, I'm several levels away from him. And I just screwed up in front of everyone. I bolt for the furthest corner of the room. Unfortunately, Jeff says, no, come sit next to me. Well, now what am I thinking? What are all of you thinking? I'm thinking, oh boy, this has two outcomes and they're bad or worse. I'm either going to get chewed out or I'm going to get fired. But what am I going to do? I go sit next to him. Now, what can Jeff say? This is really important because we're going to talk about good leaders. Jeff can say, what the hell are you doing here? You said you were going to fix it. Go. He can also say what many of us, I think, would do, the trap I would fall into. Hey, what do you think was wrong? What's your plan? This is the status thing. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what your plan is. What are you doing? Instead, what he says, very everyday conversation voice, he says, you know, I just want to let you know that I'm not worried about these problems today because I know you are. And then we had lunch. So, what are the points I'd like to make to you from this? Well, you can do everything right when you take a risk and you need to recover. But part of doing everything right is selecting your leadership and choosing where to work. Because there are those managers who would do much worse than I've imagined. Some of you know the manager who would cuss at you, swear at you, scream at you, humiliate you. If you work for one of those people, get out. So career advice one, not in my formal takeaways, is get away from the bad manager. If that's what you have, find the good one. Because Jeff has a reputation of being a very stern person, but he was a good guy when I needed him. And in fact, what happened, we've already all read ahead. We did fix the problems, we launched, we had more problems. There's a fun article you can read, which is Amazon to customers, eat shit and die, was a headline that came out of my product. Had to do with, of all things, our EULA, not being friendly and having some very bad language. But ultimately, I launched some other features that built our business and grew it, and in less than a year from this catastrophic failure with Jeff looking at me, I was promoted from senior manager to director, as opposed to me fleeing and quitting in humiliation or being fired. So, I was able to recover, and I think a huge part of that, someone in the audience told me that when I stepped forward at the mic, I was looking at the audience at that point, but Jeff was riveted on me. And I believe a huge part of why I was able to recover is he saw that I was going to handle it, and that's what he said at lunch. So, you can take some of these steps away and use them yourself. Now, what happened next? So I've had a 15-year Amazon career. Key takeaway. Key takeaway is you can be a phoenix rising from the ashes if you have a big public failure. It's about how you handle it, if you own it and fix it. And that's why you can afford to take those risks. So we are going to come all the way around to taking the risks and moving fast in this dynamic environment. It requires that you be good at recovering from failure, and that's today's recipe. So what happened next? Well, we're going to now move things forward From 2006, a year later, in 2007, I'm promoted to director. 4 years later, it's 2011, I've changed teams. I have 100 people under me as a director, and my job is to build and launch Amazon's App Store. So it's an app store that would be used on the ill-fated Fire phone, that's used on the Kindle tablets, that was supposed to compete with Apple and Google on their platforms. But for this launch, once again, we're doing a secret surprise launch. One of my jokes about this is, the surprise is usually that secret launches don't work. But this time, it's not a big demo at the all hands. Instead, we have a marketing partnership where we've made a deal to launch with Angry Birds Rio as an app. And the movie is coming out, and the app is coming out the same day, and we're going to do an overnight launch and do a press release. And Jeff has this thing, some of you may have seen it. In this period, he used to take over the Amazon homepage and introduce new features with what was called a Jeff letter. So he would take down all the merchandising and just put up a letter describing the new feature to what he saw as his customers, which they were, of course. He would describe the new feature to his customers and sign it, Jeff, I'm really excited to give this to you. And within the whole App Store, there was one feature he really loved that he had honed in on to write about. So my team works all night, pushing packages, deploying the software, testing things, and it comes to morning, and the whole App Store is working beautifully, except this one feature. Which means we haven't yet put the letter up. And 6 a.m. rolls around, and I get an email from Jeff that says, hey, where's the letter? And I reply, trying to buy some time. We're working on some problems. Now again, I want you all just to try and empathize with me. I'm an engineer, and of course I'm thinking, we're so close. It's got to just be a config file, or we missed something in deployment. Like, we're just almost there. And so I'm thinking, get in the shower, get on the treadmill. Unfortunately, ding, there's another email like 30 seconds later that says, what problems? And the audit begins. And as other people wake up, common thread here, my VP, my SVP, they get on the thread, start asking me questions, and the crisis is spiraling out of control. So that first disaster was a 40-foot high, unmistakable demo failure. The second one is building slowly because I can't ship this and people are getting frustrated, and Jeff is losing confidence. So let me take you through what I did in this case to build a recipe for what you can do when your moment in the spotlight comes. So what are the tactics to recover in a crisis? Well, I couldn't give Jeff what he wanted, which is a working product. I desperately wanted to, but we couldn't figure out what was wrong and get it fixed. So the best thing I could give him was frequent updates. Why does this work? Go for a minute into the mind of a leader when there's a problem. They're wondering, is it under control? Is everything possible being done to fix it? And specifically, they're wondering, is this guy, Ethan, the right person to handle this crisis, or do I need to bring in someone else? Well, what I did is about 9 a.m., it's about how long it took to get really bad, and for Jeff to get frustrated, by the way. His emails went from questions to more pointed questions to more or less flames. So he's now saying things like, turns out our problem was a database locking issue. He's now like, why is there even a database in this product? And pretty like hostile. So, at this point though, what I do is I send an email at 9 a.m. that says, here's where we are, here's what we know, here's what we're doing, here's what we plan to do in the next hour, and you will get your next update at 10 a.m. Now, why does this work? I suddenly pulled down the window from can Ethan fix this unknown problem to does this plan sound sane and can I trust him for 55 more minutes? And turns out that's a big difference. It's a big difference. He's like, okay, reasonable plan. And I didn't say that, but he didn't say somebody else take over. So I got my 55 minutes. And I did this hour by hour. So at 10 a.m., I kept my promise and updated him again. So the key here is in a crisis, somebody has to be point on communications. And if you're the leader, if you're the responsible person who's taken ownership, I highly recommend that you do that communication. All right. The other thing I'll say is I took ownership without defensiveness, meaning I said, yes, this is my problem, we're working on it, but again, I didn't try and hide or blame or say, well, most of the App Store is working. That wasn't going to work. You can't be defensive in this situation. If you start saying, leave me alone so I can focus, you're done, at least in my opinion. Because as soon as you're not transparent or seem to be hiding, I have to get you out of there so I can get the real story. Now, the other key is, in this case, I accepted help. So, remember, 5 years have gone by, AWS is now a thing, they have a whole database team, I have a database problem, I called in the AWS principal engineers, and my relatively junior team switched roles from trying to fix the problem to trying to bring the AWS engineers up to speed. Okay. We're going to have to pick up the pace just a little. Sorry about that. So, I had to accept help, get the database engineers in the room, but basically I was able to borrow or draft off their credibility. Because now there's someone that if Jeff were to replace me, these are the same people he would put on the problem, and they're there doing the work, and I'm reporting on what they're doing. I'm building trust back up. So, the key point is, this problem gets fixed, but I'm still in the doghouse. So what happens now? Well, I have a meeting with Jeff on my calendar for another project in a few days. And my first thought, I was optional for that meeting, was, oh no, not going there. But then I thought quickly, and I thought, you know what? If I can't face the CEO, I'm finished here. So I'm going to go find out where I stand. Now, Jeff always sat in the same spot in his conference room. So I went and thought, you know what? I know where he sits. I'm going to go sit right next to him. And unconsciously, without realizing it, I was repeating what had happened 5 years ago, where he called me to come sit next to him. So I go to the conference room. I sit there. He holds the meeting. I'm optional. We don't interact very much. I'm getting a little nervous because the whole hour he doesn't speak much to me. But at the end of the meeting, he turns to me, and what can he say? Same thing. Why are you here? Go fix it. He can also say, you know, what's the status? Instead, what he says is, how are you doing? It must have been a long week. And so once again, I knew I could stay. And in fact, my advice to you is don't hide when there's a problem. When you fail, you still have to show up. And if you can't face your leadership, it's over. But when you show that you are willing, because see, if you hide, if you avoid, then I lose confidence in you because you're not showing confidence in yourself. Also, it's very easy to flame people by remote control. But when I was right there next to him, it's much harder to be mean to a person at 2 feet distance. And I think that brought Jeff over the line to being human, being reminded that I was a person, not just someone he was mad at. So this is the slide we want to take a picture of. It's my 5-step process that I learned the hard way through these painful things that you can use to recover. Own the problem, communicate clearly and frequently, accept help if you need it or if it's offered, face your leadership, don't hide. And of course, you will have to put in the time to prove it was an exception. But what were the final results? Well, 2 crises, 2 promotions. In the first one, I went from senior manager to director. I failed again for the richest man in the world at that time, again. And yet, by showing it was an exception and showing I was willing to lead, ultimately I was promoted to vice president. After that, I spent 7 more years at Amazon, had lots of fun, lots of success. And the last point I want to make with you is failures can build trust if you handle it well. And how do I say that? Well, I would never recommend you fail just to have the opportunity to build trust. But since it's going to happen to you anyway, since there are going to be setbacks, realize failure focuses attention on you like nothing else does. And as an example, we trust people who show character under pressure. Think about for a minute the Band of Brothers analogy for foxholes. When 2 people are in a war, a literal war, and they have to trust each other with their lives. They come out trusting each other for the rest of their life. Because if you put your life on the line for me literally, I'm sure that you're going to do whatever else you need to whatever, keep my secrets safe, help me with money, give me career advice. So, the closest thing we have to a foxhole in business is a crisis of some kind. Now, it can't be a demo failure, a tech failure, it can be all kinds of things. But Jeff's last memory of me wasn't the mistake I made, it was how I recovered. And that's why I was making the joke earlier about having a chance to have the last word. So, risks give you two chances to succeed. If you take a risk, the first chance, of course, is that you'll move faster than your competition, everything will go great. But rather than seeing failure as a closed end, the second thing you get is the chance to show your leadership, show your character, and build trust. And trust is how we promote people and pick people, how we choose our investments, is who do we trust to do this. And so the final takeaway is run towards the fire. Right? The quote at the bottom I kind of like, in crisis, most people freeze, leaders move forward. And so with that, I really hope you've had an excellent time here at Sidebar. All that's left for me to do is to say thank you. I'm Ethan Evans, and my job is to try to help you with your careers. I very much appreciate your attention.
Okay, we're going to take two questions, because I know a lot of you have questions for Ethan. So, anybody want to be bold and take a risk and ask your
I don't like, and I like people to ask hard questions.
Yeah, I like that.
I think you mentioned it in the first example. One of the key things is the leader has to be the right leader. And that dictates the situation of the strategy too. What would you recommend for those of us or those of the audience who might not have that kind of encouraging leader?
Yeah, I think that's a problem. See, if you know that enough to ask me the question, you take action before. If that person is going to stab you in the back or trample over you when you most need them, you know that you need to get away. Why wait until you're forced? Right? You're playing with a hot potato situation where you're trying not to fail because you know you're going to get beaten up, but you also, to succeed, have to move fast and take risks. You're in a no-win situation. So while it's easy to say, just leave, and I've had a discussion with some other people here, I don't like the word just because it belittles the difficulty of finding a better job. Make your plan to get out. Start making your escape plan now. And you have all these wonderful peers here and the career circles. Take advantage of those to build your escape plan.
Okay, one more.
So let's say you are now talking to a leader that might be your leader. How do you assess whether or not he is going to, or he or she, or whomever, is going to be there for you if and when you need them to stand by you and stand up for you instead of trample?
That's a great question. So the question I think everybody heard is, how do you know what the leader's going to do? The first thing is observe what they've done in other circumstances, if at all possible. So how are they treating other people who have setbacks, mistakes, problems? Are they brutal? Are they? I have a coaching client who was telling me that his leader didn't like a report he brought and was actively cussing at him. I'm like, okay, how do you expect this to work out? But you can look and see what they're doing with others. The second thing you can do is you can have a discussion with them. There's this idea, very quickly, it's from debate, it's called poisoning the well. That sounds bad, but the idea is you service the situation in advance and say, hey, for example, we're not doing a beta for this. If some bugs emerge because we didn't find a beta, how are you going to feel about that and what are we going to do? And you get them to talk through it, and then they kind of have to live up to what they said. Now, really terrible leaders might be like, oh, that'll be okay, actually you're fired. But most people can't stand that level of internal self-hypocrisy. So if you can talk them through, that's what I would do, is I would investigate with them in advance and say, Tell me how you handled crisis before. Tell me a little bit about how you supported, this is a big project with a lot of risk. How have you supported people before, and what do you want to do when we have some launch problems? And you get a little bit of a roadmap, and you make them part of your solution so that they feel like they're a part of handling that. I try and bring them along, is what I would do.
Okay, let's give another hand.
Yeah.